Greetings once again, friends, live from Retro Central and in front of my GX TV today. My name is Peter, and welcome to episode number 5 of Consolation. As always, I thank you very much for taking the time to check out my work, and I hope that you'll enjoy what you're about to see and hear. If you're a fan of Konami games like I have been for a number of years, the last few days in the video game world have been troubling, to say the very least. Word that Silent Hills, which was a collaboration between Metal Gear Solid's Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, is no more. Konami pulled the plug on that. And that's led to other speculation this week, talking about what's going on behind the scenes at Konami. Are they going to be laying off a lot of people? Are they going to be consolidating their operations? Is the company going to be pulling out of console video games altogether? There is certainly a lot of speculation that's been going on. And I could talk about that. I could spend 10 minutes talking about that, but I really don't want to do that. What I choose to do instead in this episode is look back at the years and years of entertainment and joy that Konami video games have brought me as a video game player. And there has been a lot in terms of positives and really enjoyable experiences that I've had with Konami video games over the years. My history with Konami games really goes back to arcades. I played a lot of track and field as a teenager. As a matter of fact, I've talked about in past videos that playing track and field in the arcades was one way that I could extend the amount of tokens or quarters that I had because I was pretty good at it. So I could marathon a game of track and field for a half an hour and get a lot of life out of a couple of dollars left in tokens. So that was always nice. Then playing other games in the arcade from Konami, most notably Blades of Steel, a game called Boot Camp, or Combat School as it's called in some territories, which is track and field but with a military theme. Those games are games that I grew up playing. And when we got to the Nintendo Entertainment System, or the 8-bit era, Konami games were a couple of the first games on the system that I wound up playing. Back in the late 80s, before I had my own NES, I would play the games at a friend's house, and two of the first games that I played were the home version of Track and Field, which is a conversion of, or a combination, I should say, of Track and Field and Hypersports. Good time. Pat the NES Punk did a really fun review of that, and I'll try and link that below so you can check that out after. Track and Field was one. Top Gun is the other, and I know that game gets a lot of hate because of how difficult the landings are and how short it is, but I still really enjoy the game. And then when I got my own NES in late 1990 and during the early 90s, I got to experience even more Konami greatness. Gradius, for example, or Gradius, I always get the pronunciation wrong. Heck of a shooter. Life Force is another one I still have in my collection today. Actually, I have both games. Fantastic shooter that I actually used to play the coin-op during my late high school years. Jackal and Contra, two fantastic games. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or the TMNT licensed games, absolutely fantastic. Granted, the first one is a little bit on the tough side, but TMNT 2, the arcade game, and then Part 3, which is the Manhattan Project, both excellent experiences, very fun to play, even if the third game came a little bit late. And then, of course, came the Super Nintendo, the first system that I bought with my own money. And wouldn't you know it, one of the first games, or one of the late games in 1991, its first year on the market that I got, was a game called Super Castlevania 4, which remains one of my favorite Castlevania games of all time. It kind of jockeys back and forth between that one and a game I'll talk about in a little bit. Super Castlevania 4 was the game that made me go back and play the other Castlevania games from the NES era. That's how great that game is, when it's so good that not only do you play it from start to finish, but it makes you go back and play the earlier games, is a testament to how good the game is and how influential it is. So there was Super Castlevania 4. There was TMNT 4, Turtles in Time, which is a fantastic game. You can see Contra 3 on the GX TV over here. Bought that game right away at launch because it's Contra. You had to have it. Axelay, which is one of my favorite shooters of all time. Also a fantastic game. I did a Pete Plays on that last year. The quality of games were just so consistent, and the games are so fun to play. I could list them all, and I'd still probably forget a few off the top of my head. And then, of course, when we got to the PlayStation era, there was a little bit of time before Konami really found its stride. But then in 1997, which is one of my favorite years in video game history, we got Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which eclipsed Super Castlevania 4 as my favorite Castlevania game, and a game that I could not put down. This is the game that pulled me away from other fantastic games of the time, such as Ace Combat 2, Rage Racer, Parappa the Rapper, NHL 98, Final Fantasy 7. Castlevania Symphony of the Night was the pinnacle. It was the game to play at that time, and I could not pull myself away. When I would get home from work, that would be the first thing that I would play. Before I went to bed, I'd spend a half hour playing it, or however long I could before I had to get some sleep before work the next day. It was that influential. It was that great. It was that memorable. It was that important that I had to continue to play it until the very end. And then, of course, when you find out that there's more to the game than what you think, it was just absolutely mind-blowing then. And then, of course, in 1998, we get Metal Gear Solid for the holiday season, a game that I played a heck of a lot more than the Ocarina of Time. It really solidified, at least from where I'm sitting, solidified the PlayStation as one of the best video game consoles ever. Metal Gear Solid, of course, has turned out sequel after sequel, but it all started with that game on the PlayStation in 1998, reviving a series that originally we saw for the NES back in the 80s. And even during the PlayStation 2 and Xbox eras, although the quality of some of the games started to disintegrate a little bit, I enjoyed both the Castlevania games on the PS2. I know that that's going to get some boos from some of you, but it's the truth. I did enjoy those games. Getting to play Silent Scope at home, even though you didn't have the gun, because I'm an arcade rat, that was right up my alley. And even the Dance Dance Revolution games that came out for the PlayStation and the PS2, being able to play those games from the arcade at home was pretty fantastic. So even though Konami is in an unsettled state, to say the very least, I am grateful that I got to play the games that made Konami what it was and what it is, and hopefully what it will be, no matter what happens with the company from here. It's influential. It's produced some of my favorite games of all time, and I choose to look at the good things and not the bad things. And maybe you will too. What are some of your favorite Konami games? I'm sure you have some in your library or collection somewhere. I'd love to hear about them, hear about your experiences, what you remember most about a company that may or may not be around for a while. We'll have to see. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Consolation, taking a look, there it is, at Contra 3 on the GX TV over here. I'll try to do some more filming here so you can see some video game footage instead of just looking at my mug the whole time in the future. In the meantime, make sure you to check out Consolation.com, which has more writing, has all of the videos posted, and has some other cool stuff. I hope that you'll check it out. Thanks for watching, everybody, and until the next episode, which will be coming in a couple of weeks, take care.